All right, and we are back, and ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute honor to sit down with the one, the only, the legend himself, Jeremy McWilliams. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to be here.
It's an absolute honor, man. I'm still, pinching myself. Anyway, listen, me and you got a lot to talk about. As far as your writing goes, where it all started for you, for those out there, especially the younger generation that have no idea what a legend you are when you walk around the paddock, and everything you've accomplished and who you raced against, and from proper road racing to MotoGP to Moto America, the baggers to Arch, and everything in between. The list is long. So, Jeremy, tell us where it all began on two wheels for you.
I mean, if we started at the beginning, we'd be here all night. So I'll try to put it in a nutshell. But I never intended to go racing motorcycles. That's not, I think, how you kind of fall into it. I mean, for sure, for some guys it is, and girls it is. They start young. Their parents encourage them to start on, off road, and that progresses into, road racing or circuit racing, whatever it might be. I was just happily hanging about with buddies on motorcycles, enjoying ourselves, riding motorcycles on the street. And I didn't have enough money to go and buy a racing motorcycle, so that was just out of reach. And then my wife, who I'm still with now, I met her when I was 17. She was like 16, and she started racing. Sorry, she started riding with me on the road, and it got to a point where we kind of knew that, this is kind of a bit crazy. We're riding down back roads with buddies who are racing in road racing, and we had to I had to kind of make the decision. Well, do I start racing and get off the roads, because the way we're riding on the street was a bit, it was a bit over the top. And I had two buddies who were racing, and they kind of encouraged me. They kind of said, why don't you come and race with us? They were racing in an Irish Championship and road racing in the Irish Championship. And one of them loaned me his leathers and his helmet. My background before then was just riding on off road, and got onto the street and really enjoyed riding on the street. So I didn't have any like kind of racing experience, not even in off road. We were just doing it for fun. And then he loaned me his leathers and his helmet and his boots one day, and said, go and have a go. And I went to Medilla Park, and I finished fifth, and it kind of took off from there. So it was a hobby sport. We went down for a 2-day meeting. Jill made the chili. We all had a few beers at night. We weren't really taking it seriously. It was just let's go and do it like any hobby. Let's go and have a bit of fun over the weekend. And then within a year, I'd won the national championship on a production bike. And then the next year, I got support from a little shop called the Paper Shop, and he gave me a 350 TZ and said, just run that. Of course, me not knowing, I thought I'd made it, and not knowing what it would cost to go and run a TZ 350, because you got to build them every weekend, resim the gearbox, crankshafts, piston change every other weekend. It was quite costly to go and do it. So I did it, had a big bill at the end of the year. And I'm glad I didn't turn it down. And if I had, of course, the career might never have started, because it progressed on. I won that championship. Then I won both championships in the same year, production and the 350 class. And then I was just kind of at the right place at the right time, because Queen's University in Belfast, and this is kind of weird, because I don't know any other university that have sponsored riders and supported riders. They gave me a 250 Yamaha, a TZ Yamaha, and said, okay, go and race the Irish Championship, and we wanted you to do some British rounds and even some European rounds. And if it hadn't been for them, then the mechanical engineering department supported this, because they had so much two-stroke prowess throughout the world. If you go back and look at what they were doing. You know, they were making engines for Jaguar and Ford. They were helping with injection and stuff. And a company that later supported me in my MotoGP career from Pittsburgh, a company called Optimum Power Technology, they got involved with them. But before they did that, Queen's University gave me these Yamahas for a couple of years, and I went and won the Irish Championship. Went and finished, well up in like top 6 in European Championship. Won a couple of British Championship races, and raced in some of the selected British Championship races. But I couldn't afford to do it all because I was funding just the travel part of getting our small team there. They were supporting everything else, and then it kind of just took off from there. I noticed that a guy called Joe Miller, who was a big transport company here in Ireland, kept turning up at the races, and we knew that he had a 500 GP team. So I was wondering why Joe was always there, and he was always watching. I went and won the biggest race of the year at Mandela Park on a 250 Yamaha against all the 750s and everything else. And that was, I think, that was the one thing that kind of got Joe's attention. And Joe said, "Can you come and speak to me at Christmas time?" We had a handshake, and he said, "Will you come and race 500 GPs for me?" I'd never raced a 500 Yamaha GP bike, so it was scary. It was a big step. I had to give up the job that I loved, and I really did like the job. I had a great job with Chubb Alarms. I was in charge of the CCTV department and managing that. I had to give that up and go racing World Championship. And I asked him, can I not just keep my job and also do this? And he said, "No, you've got to come and race GPs. You're going to go all over the world." And that was that was like that step that I was very nervous of making. But of course, if you get offered a job like that, you're never going to turn it down. So jumped into that, went raced, crashed and burned, hurt myself. I really kind of messed up the first 8 or 9 races, and then came back at the end of the year and thought the whole thing through again. Should I actually be here? Am I ready for this? Went back. This is way back in 1994. I went back in '94, and then had like 6 top 10 consecutive top 10 finishes, and had a real battle with Barris on the Lucky Strike bike at the Lucky Strike Suzuki at Laguna Seca. Nearly beat him. He beat me across the line, and I think that was it. We then stayed in 500cc GPs for the next 4 years, struggling on privateer machinery back then. The factory stuff was so much better. And I think, that could have been the end of my career, only I convinced Robert Fleck, who was still from Queen's University, still helping us, to move into 250 GPs with the help of Optimum Power Technology. And that's when I swapped onto 250s, and I think that's when my career came good. So on privateer machinery again, much closer. The 250s are much more equal back then than the 500s were. And I think I finished. I should really know these things, shouldn't I? But I finished the World Championship in 90, 98, 99, somewhere around there, and then 2001. I was back on a 250. But the funny thing about the 250 was that, I kind of believed that I should have been, that the factory should have been taking note, and I was deserving of a 250 factory machine. And myself and my manager, who's sadly no longer with us, but we flew to Italy and asked them for a 250, a factory 250 Aprilia when I was riding an Aprilia. And I went into the meeting and said, "There's no more 250s left. Sorry, they're all taken. We're going to lunch, but we'll come back and speak to you after lunch." We hung about, and I thought, "Yeah, what's the point? What are we doing here?" going to get anything out of it. And then they came back and offered me the RSW 500 to ride alongside Tetsuya Harada as the factory 500 rider. And I was like, just a bolt out of the blue. And obviously took that, and we raced that for a year. Then they shelved that project because they were working on the cube for the future of for the 990 when the 990 was becoming the class in 2002.
Yeah.
And I went back on a 250. I think that's the year I finished sixth, actually. But in 98 and 99, I had lots of podiums on non-factory stuff. So I think I loved, I was a very natural 250 racer, jumping on the 500s and then onto the cube. Whenever I went back to in the interim, I went with two Kenny Roberts 3-cylinder KR3, and that was an incredible bike. After my 1 year with Aprilia on the factory bike, privateer bike again in 2001, had a great year, won a race in Assen by 13 or 14 seconds, then onto Kenny's bike in 2002 and 3, and then the progression, then everything was changing at that time to onto the 990 MotoGP project. So I end up back with Aprilia in 2004 on a 2-year deal. They stopped it after 1 year because the cube was such an animal to ride. I mean, it beat me up. It hurt me. I broke every rib, collarbones every other week. All of the things that that you don't want on a motorcycle. That was that motorcycle. It was such a beast. And then I walked away retired from MotoGP in the end of 2004, and kind of think that's it over and done. You have a year or a couple of years where not much happens, and then other things started to turn up. Test ride positions. Eric Buell called me and come and help him with his project. Race Daytona on the XBR, on the air-cooled XBR, qualified sixth on it. It blew itself to shit. Lap 35. I think you're never really sure what's going to happen once that career. You think it's never going to end, and then it just stops. And then all of these other things have really come along since then, and I've been busier than I've ever been. I'm flying more than I was racing when I was racing MotoGP. I'm still, as you know, I had a couple of years there with Indian on Super Hooligan and Baggers, which I'm very grateful to Gary Gray and the team and S&S Motorcycles. They believed in me. They asked me to come along and help them develop the Bagger to go and race the championship. And I helped that and kind of shaped it a little, obviously, geometry wise and rider ergo, where to put the rider, all of the things that you need to make a bagger into a race bike. I was behind that with the team, and so I've been very lucky, honestly, Chris, to have all of those opportunities for all of those years. I was a test rider with KTM motorcycles for about 13 years. Helped shape the Super Duke. That was my project. The Super Duke GT, right into the 1390. The track bike that that will come along in the future. I'll still a little bit involved with that, and now I am working exclusively at the moment for street bike and adventure projects with CF Moto. So I really can't complain. I've had a great career, still enjoying it. I'm off to Thailand with Bridgestone in 15 or 16 days to help them with the launch of their new product. I've just come back from working with Continental Tires on a marketing project with them. So yeah, I've just really had the most out of it, and still enjoying it.
Man, you've had a mega career. Also, on top of that, I want to talk about the Northwest 200 too, right? The real open roads. It's to me, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. The Isle of Man TT, the Northwest 200, the Macau. All open road racing to me is my favorite. So how I personally classify road racing would be the TT in any proper road racing, then BSB, and then below that it would be Moto America and MotoGP and WSBK. Watching, and we often use the term aliens. You hear it all the time, Valentino Rossi and Marquez and, Doohan and all them back in the day. But to me, the real aliens of the sport are people like you that also race the proper roads, right? Because that's unique in its own way. To me, there is a difference, and you find that even throughout time, people that do the open road racing, they also do short circuit racing. But you take short circuit racers to the open roads, and they're like, absolutely not. There's no way I'm doing this, right? So, to me, it's like you guys have a little, and girls have a little extra right here where you feel safe, I guess, in a confined space, right? Versus the normal people would be an open, wide open, much open, space with plenty of runoff. But yeah, it's an amazing thing. And the Northwest is, and I've heard you raced it for 13 years, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, because I started in 2012. It wasn't my first road race. My first road race was Macau Grand Prix, the one near Hong Kong. It was like, because Joe Miller was a huge road race fan, and he had also road racers, as well as his GP team. But he convinced me in '93 to go to Macau, and I thought, yeah, what the hell am I doing here? And it's like nothing you've ever seen. It's just the Armco barriers the whole way around. And I went out and I won the first race, and I was like, okay, done this, got the T-shirt. The bike actually stopped on the line in the second leg of it, with a gearbox issue. So, and you do not race a 500 GP bike if you've got a gearbox issue. And one of the reasons why I went there was because Kevin Swans had been, I think, 2 years before I went, and he just cleared off. He just cleared town and wheelied and had a bit of fun, and got the paycheck as you do. And I thought, well, it can't be that. If Kevin Swanson's turned up to do that, it can't be that bad. But when I turned up, it was like, whoa, this is something else. So I raced that, and then I didn't come back to road racing until 2012. I went and raced the Northwest 200 for Rand Farquhar on the KMR Super Twin. And the reason why I went was because he had come to me to the Phillip Island, the Classic International, which is a great event that we raced there for about 10 years with Roger Winfield, Team Winfield on XR69s, and we had an awesome time there. And we also got to race against some of the big names there too. Lots of names turned up to come and do that. Hickey came over to try to win it, didn't win it outright. Through the years, quite a few riders from America, also some of the big names in America, came over to race it because it became such an iconic event. And it was countries v countries, so America v Australia v rest of the world in GP, and GB being us, the UK team. And I won that quite a few times, and we had the organizers were so good at looking after us, and obviously the race Phillip Island, you're always going to take any opportunity to race Phillip Island. It's the best circuit in the world. So we did that for quite a few years, and then how I got the race Northwest 200 was Ryan offered me one of his bikes and said, well, let's see what you can do on the roads then, because you're like 2 seconds quicker than me on this, but let's see what you can do on the road. And I went to the Northwest and finished second to him, and I think that's kind of what really made me want to come back. And I went and won it then the next year, and I won it 2 or 3 or 3 times. I need to ask the missus many times I won it, Phil. She can't remember either. But I've got like stacks of podiums, and podiums again this year on the JMCC Super Twin, the Aprilia. And I also raced Super Sport. Unfortunately, crashed just coming out of the roundabout, touched the curb, crashed, broke a couple of ribs, and went back out and raced. But then my Super Twin broke a crankshaft. But I think it's something that if you come, like you say, TT or Northwest 200, it's such an incredible event. You've got 100,000 people turn up over the week at the Northwest 200 on the best part of the world. This is where we are at the minute. We have a cabin up here in Port Rush, which is right beside where the race is. And one of the reasons for getting this was because I knew I was going to do the Northwest for a few more years. And it's a home from home. We're still here on a Monday night. We probably all should be back at work. But I don't think, if you have never seen the Northwest 200 and really get to stand roadside right beside that road at something with speeds over 210 miles an hour, there's nothing like it. There's straights on this course here, which is probably 2 miles from this cabin, for 2.5 miles long. So it's like a smaller version of the TT, but it's a mass start. And the reason why I never did the TT was because I never thought I could kind of work against the clock. I want to see where I am on the road, and when you do a mass start here in the Northwest, you can tell exactly where you are. Okay, there's 2 guys in front of you, or you're leading the race, or you're 4th or 6th or whatever it might be. You could work out what that is. And the mass start here at the Northwest 200 on such narrow roads definitely is quite exhilarating.
Oh, I can only imagine. I know how exciting it is for me when I watch you guys out there and race it. It's absolutely amazing. So, in your opinion, would that be your biggest and greatest achievement you've done in road racing, is winning the Northwest 200?
I think it definitely ranks up there. Of course, winning, stepping on the podium on that 500 Aprilia, for Aprilia in Italy at Mugello was pretty special. I did it again in Donington. Led the race for 14 laps. Valentino and Kenny Roberts Jr. were behind me. Valentino eventually got past with a couple of laps to go, and then Roberts pipped me across the line too. So I was third on that one. Yeah, numerous pole positions on that and the KR bike. They were pretty special. Holding the fastest ever 2-stroke lap record on that KR3 still stands. Fastest race ever on a 2-stroke on the KR3 still stands at 2 or 3 circuits. I should be able to tell you what those circuits are, but I've only been told these by guys that know. So they were special days, very special memories. But then when you come back to the Northwest 200 in front of your home, your home fans, your home crowd, and racing around there and seeing the programs going up in the air whenever you're leading and standing on the top step of the Northwest, I think that's as good a feeling as anything I've done throughout my career. So yeah, and just still to be able to do it, even to stand on the podium right now at my age, it does take a bit of conviction and training and all the things that you need to do and preparation, but it's all worth it if you stand back on that podium.
100%.
Yeah, I'd say it ranks. Yeah, in answer to your question, yeah, for sure, because it ranks right up there at the top. Yeah.
Throughout your career, did you find it an easy transition going from the open roads to short circuits?
I started on short circuits only, telling my mum that I would never race roads. And that was how my career started, on the short circuits. Even though Ireland, as you know, as in general, is road racing back in those days, that was the big thing. Ulster Grand Prix, Tandragee, Cookstown, and then we had so many races in the south of Ireland where all the road racers went all round and raced every single one of them for the road race championship of the Irish Road Race Championship. I raced on circuits only, and then decided that if I'd gone to roads, I thought, and I think I was pretty correct, that you'd never have been as fast as you need to be on a circuit if you want to go and race European championships or world championships. Excuse me. So that was the reason why I didn't race roads back then. I wanted to further my career on circuits. So it was a far easier transition for me to come back onto roads than it would have been going the other way from roads onto circuits. I would never have made it had I started on roads here. I'd never have been fast enough on a circuit because you couldn't have crashed and got away with it as many times as I crashed on a circuit when I started. So I knew that, that because, I mean, one of the interesting things about my first year winning a championship here, an Irish championship, was that I also crashed more than anybody else in that championship that I won. So you couldn't have done that on the road. So I knew I'm not ready for the roads. I don't have the experience to go and race roads. So stick with the circuits, get good on circuits, and then at some point, if you ever feel that the need, and I back then I didn't ever feel that I was ever going to race a road race. So I didn't. It had no interest to me. I was only just like tunnel vision about trying to get to the very top. Particularly whenever Joe Miller said to me, well, it was whenever Robert Fleck, Professor Fleck, said to me, "You've got 250 Yamahas now. Let's go and race British Championship and some European championships." Only then I was just completely, my mindset was, okay, let's just race circuits and try to get to the top. But nothing ever prepares you for jumping into GPs. The day I turned up at Jerez in Spain for the pre-season testing and looked over the fence at Biaggi and Caparossi and Melandri and all of those guys that were top of their game. I was just watching the 250s. I couldn't believe what they were doing on 250s. I'm thinking, oh shit, I'm not even in this category. I'm in the 500 class. So yeah, it was definitely jumping in the deep end. And yeah, I'm glad I did it. Of course, I've never had this career, but back to what I said at the very beginning, it was just being in the right place at the right time with somebody who really wanted me to come and race World Championship. And the career is just, it's just, I haven't won a World Championship, but I've had a bloody good career out of it and really enjoyed and still enjoying everything I do and all of the spin-offs that we do from it. So
it's absolutely amazing. And, talking about the RSQ, what a beautiful machine that was. It was a proper looking race bike. It really was. I remember, it was Edwards that where it caught on fire and he had to bail off of that thing. That's crazy.
Well, I met Colin the next year when I took his seat. He went somewhere else, obviously, and I asked him, why did you never tell me how bad this thing was to race? He just said, well, you never asked me, so. But it was such a hard bike to ride, such a difficult bike. It had like 2 torque peaks. You had one at 12,000, and then you'd have a massive one at 14,000, and that's what kept on flicking us off. But yeah, it was. That 3-cylinder motor was derived from a Formula One motor, and it was really light crankshaft, very little inertia. It just lit up, and it was really difficult to control. There were guys trying to control it with electronics, and trying to curtail those peak torque points, and never really succeeded in doing much with it. But yeah, it was a lovely bike, sounded great, achieved some of the highest top speeds in the straight line, but it was really difficult to ride off the turn.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm pretty sure he was the last guy ever to get a pole position in MotoGP on a 2-stroke, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that would be on the KR3.
Yeah. How proper, man. I remember when they introduced MotoGP, there's half the people are like, no, I want the 2 strokes to continue. And the other half were like, it's time to evolve. I was no, we need to keep 2 strokes around. But to see what you did on that, KR. It's dude, what a machine
I think
that was.
had they continue with 2 strokes right now with the, injection technology that they have right now too, that 2 strokes will be going quicker. I think the MotoGP bikes. I mean lap times, not in a straight line, maybe not in a straight line speed, but had they made them 600 or 700 cc 2 strokes or whatever that they might have been, I really truly believe that the lap times will probably be quicker now than even the current MotoGP bikes are.
Yeah,
Because we know back then, Shinichi Ito achieved like over 200 miles per hour at Hockenheim on an injected 500 Honda. That was like 92 or 93 or something, 93 or 94.
Yeah, that's crazy. And they didn't weigh nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that nothing. And then, through all that, an amazing career. And then we end up in Moto America. Jeremy, what was it like the first time you come to America and raced in our series?
I love racing in Moto America. I love it. I like the organization. I like the circuits. I love the circuits better than British Championship circuits. They're a little bit more kind of Europeanized. British circuits some of them are really difficult. You've got to be a real circuit specialist to get on with them. The Cadwell Parks, the Open Parks, Mallory. Whenever we were racing back then, even like Thruxton's so weird. It's such a strange circuit. You've got some great circuits, obviously Brands Hatch, Donington Park, Silverstone, but the other ones that are intertwined into the championship are really, really difficult. Knock Hill, especially, it's some of the circuits are where Moto America, they're more flowing. I just kind of gelled much more with circuits in America, and I've raced nearly most of them by now through one thing or another. It's just through racing with Buell for a while, and then I came over and did a couple of XR 1200 races and was quite successful at that. And when we did Indy and Barber, had a number of wins on those, and I loved the Indy circuit. Actually, I really liked the Indy circuit. And then you talk about circuits like Road America and Road Atlanta. Absolutely love them. Mid Ohio, got to race Mid Ohio this year. That takes some doing. That's a technical circuit, but once you get your head around it, it's an awesome circuit. Laguna Seca, absolutely, one of my favorite. I could go on. They're all bloody good in my eyes.
Yeah, they are. Road Atlanta is definitely one of my favorites. So is VIR, Virginia National Raceway, is always
and VIR, yeah,
one of my favorites too. And you're right. So speaking of just real quick, BSB again, Cadwell Park, that is my favorite racetrack in the world. I remember the first time I seen Fast Bikes magazine. I open up, there's Johnny Ray on the Red Bull Honda just properly sending it. I was like, what is this? That's what really opened my eyes to BSB. And since then I watch it religiously. I actually went out there in 23 to Cadwell Park. Because my good mate Dave Neal that runs Off Track Podcast out there where you are in the UK. And I remember Jeremy going there and I was like, is this the actual track? Because it's literally this wide. They're like, yeah, that's the track. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Yeah. And then to see Josh Brooks and them just properly send it off that jump, I was just like, you got to be kidding. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen besides, open wheel racing, of course.
I raced them on 250s and I thought they were absolutely ideal 250 circuits. For a 250, they were perfectly good for racing 250s. Just, not big bikes, not pure, super bikes. I think that's and I think you've got to be a circuit specialist on those big bikes, and that's, I think, why it's so difficult for riders from Europe and America or anywhere to come and be successful at the British Championship. We've seen how many have come over and struggled with it, and just thought, yeah, wow. These circuits are definitely just a different kettle of fish.
It's definitely a different breed for sure. It's I mean, we had John Hopkins race there. There's been a lot of them now. Scott Redding's back and he's actually doing well again. He actually won the title in 23, I think. So yeah, it's absolutely. I actually have a question from my buddy Jason Dawes. He wants to know, what does Mr. McWilliams think about the CP2 or R7 motor going in Moto3 next year?
I think everything, it's got everything evolves. I saw that happening, and I know that there was, quite a few different manufacturers in for that contract. Uh, I, I've got to remain completely impartial on that because we don't know what they're capable of doing with it. And honestly speaking, it wouldn't have mattered if it was a CF Moto or R7 or Honda or whatever it might have been. It's still going to be an awesome class. You've just got to, I think, let this evolution of what that R7 motor will become an awesome race motor. Yeah, I'd prefer to see CF Moto get in it because I work for them. But um, I think like all of those small category classes, it's down to, at the end of the day, the engines are going to be exactly the same, which means that it's a good thing because it's down to the rider.
Yeah, for sure. I like to see the evolution of it too myself. I think it's a good idea. It's such a big jump from Moto 3 now to Moto 2 anyway. I mean, it's like it's
Yeah,
probably it's
and the same
ridiculous.
from Moto 2 into MotoGP.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely, you're right. And then obviously, coming into Moto America racing the baggers, who would have thought we'd be racing Harley Davidsons and Indians on a racetrack, right? In America. What an amazing class. And I think that's the reason why Moto America partly has been so successful over the past couple of years too, is because of the Harley and the bagger racing. And of course, the Super Hooligan is one of my favorite class, and to have somebody like Arch Motorcycles and Johnny Utah up in the paddock, right, having his own team, and yeah, Johnny Utah taking it back, right. What's it like, man, racing the Arch and hanging out with Keanu and that whole team setup? It's a project I know that came together fairly quickly at the beginning, and there's been some teething issues as it normally is when you first come into a series with a brand new race bike. But highly successful, and it's a beautiful machine. I'm a fan of pink anyway, and it's what a proper bike.
Yeah, bike looks awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
the team are awesome. Just the whole setup, I think, kind of blows you away a little bit. They do things properly. It's a full on effort. Kiana is a huge race fan. It was him that actually encouraged Gard to go racing, because Gard had no interest in going racing, and Gard will tell you the story. Kiana joined the company and said, "Look, we probably need to go racing. We need to get us out there." And of course, Gard didn't think that he had a race product. And then over the next year, 2 or 3, Kiana encouraged him some more and said, "Well, we could go and race Super Hooligans on this." And I think how they've gone about their business has been really professional. They've done it in the best way they possibly could, other than they probably could have done a little bit more time to go behind the scenes testing before jumping into Daytona. I turned up in end of January to help them with the bike that they were obviously racing at Daytona, and it was over the couple of days that we had, the progression was very quick. We got something in the area, so they obviously had a very good product. It only needed small tweaks to go to make the bike pretty competitive. And as you saw at Daytona, it was pretty competitive. And for most of the race, Corey Alexander had the fastest sector time in sector 1 and on day 2. So yeah, you can see from those little just that there was some points of that motorcycle that showed it was obviously very, very competitive. So I think you've got to take, in your first year, you're going to find all of the points that it's going to make it really difficult to win a championship. You're never going to win a championship in your first year, but you learn so much from testing and racing, and I think you learn more from racing even sometimes you do from testing. So I think over this year, the team have learned so much, and they've got to a point, you know, Corey just missed out on a podium at Mid-Ohio. I raced the bike too. We had two bikes. It was my first time racing the bike. I think my best finish was 8th. I would have liked a little bit more time and a little bit more just time to test before we went racing, but these things aren't always possible. You've just got to sometimes jump into the deep end and give it your all, give it your best. And I think the team did an amazing job for their first year in Super Hooligan.
Absolutely, they did.
They'll come back a lot stronger next year, and I think that'll be the proof in the pudding, I guess. You know,
Yeah,
how
for
competitive
sure.
it will be.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it'll because I have all that data from this year, and like you said, what to do, what not to do, where to improve, where, you know, what's good. So yeah, I mean, it's an exciting class,
It's just the areas that, you know, we need to work on that just weren't possible during a race year. You know, there's lots of things, lots of little things and little tweaks and changes that the team know now that they can take into year 2.
absolutely. And so next year, I know you'll be winning the championship in the Super Hooligan class for sure, Jeremy.
Well, let's hope.
Let's go. Yeah, dude, you absolutely have my vote, and with the team you have behind you, and you know, developing the bike and coming out swinging next year. I mean, it's already a strong project, like you said. You know, the fastest sector times, and it's a good looking bike, proper mega team behind them, and people know what they're doing, right? Which is huge. And it's so important. I often say that, you know, when a rider has a team behind them that truly believes in them, it leaves you to keep their mind focused on what you need to do in developing the bike and making it go proper mega fast around a racetrack for sure. My buddy Alex Hampel says, Jeremy, you are one of the greatest. You did it all.
Thanks very much, Al. Very kind of you to say. I don't ever think I've done it all. I think there's always something still to do, but that's very kind of him. I have to say, yeah, listen, I didn't still expect to be racing at my age, but I fully intended to be racing well into my 50s. And I guess, you know, that's just carried on in some way, and I'm still loving what we're doing. You know, I know I can't jump into a Moto America Superbike race and go and run at the front, or a BSB race at British Championship. But I know where my my strong points are, and you know what I can do, and finishing second to Tyler on the Super Hooligan, and you know, winning Daytona on the bagger. Those things were, you know, you also, you know, you talked about the Northwest. I think my time there with Indian when I won day 2 in 2023, was it? Yeah, 2023, 22 on the bagger at Daytona was one of the most special days too. So, you know, I think you've got to keep the hope up that you can still pull something out of the bag at, you know, whatever age you are, and carry on doing it. And you've got to walk away from it whenever you're not competitive. And I think I know when to do that.
I think I get asked the question all the time. I still think you and Josh Hayes keep continuing doing what you're doing, and my answer has always been the same. It's because you're still absolutely deep in love with the sport, and it gives you a feeling that nothing else ever is going to replicate. I often, wanted to talk to somebody that's retired from racing and see how they deal with it on a day-to-day basis and what they're doing afterwards, right? You're trying to feel this mega rush you've had your whole career and your whole life. And how do you fill that void when you do finally hang up the leathers and walk away,
I think that's the difficult thing, is because we're all still looking for that, that incredible high that you get from competing. Josh is doing a really great job. He's still ultra competitive. I raced in that super sport class this year with him, and he's still seriously fast. So that's something that, and the reason why he wants to do it, I'm sure, I'm not speaking for him, but I'm sure he thinks the same as me, that, well, if I'm still fast, why would I not be doing it? And nothing fulfills, Josh winning in the rain this year. It's like, nothing comes close to that. You know, nothing in life gets close to standing on that top step. You know, sometimes when you're least expecting it.
But it's always an honor when you get a chance to do it. You know, it's memories that you'll always have, and us fans too of watching you and everybody else do it. It's something we'll always remember and greatly value too, for sure. My good mate Harry Cook, BSB, man, what is up? He says, are you still helping out TBA?
Yeah, Tom Booth Amos
Nope.
finished, just missed out in third in the championship, and yeah, I help him because he just left here actually he was here last weekend racing the beach race at Port Rush, just on the beach, just down the street here, and he was in Moto 3, and I think very unfairly was not rehired for one reason or another. And I thought he was too good to be left with nothing. And so we started working on something. And I called him and said, look, if you want to have a look at this, and we got him into World Superbike paddock on Super Sport 300, and he finished twice second in that championship. But it's, to me, that championship is the hardest thing for anybody to watch. It's like, it's the scariest. It's scarier than Moto 3. You know, it's hard in the mouth stuff. And I thought we need to get him out of that and get him a Super Sport 600 ride. So we got him into Super Sport and into an Italian team. And he went through a couple of Italian teams, and he's now with Triumph. And he's done very, very well. Obviously, he won a couple of races, finished second in Jerez at the last race, just missed out because Masia won the race. Masia took third in the championship over Tom. But yeah, he's a lovely, lovely guy, and we're good friends, and we've remained close. And actually, he came over to the Northwest 200 this year and mechanicked for me. One of the bikes that we had that we were going to race, the Ducati V2 Ducati in Super Sport, had a motor problem. Tom called his buddy in the Isle of Man, and they sent an R6 to England. Tom's father picked it up, drove it to Dublin, got the overnight ferry, brought the bike up. Tom and his father and his brother prepared the bike, and I raced it here at the Northwest 200. So he's a true like one in a million. And you know, I think he never probably ever comes across that way on TV, but he's super shy and he's quiet, and I think he struggles with that TV side of it, but he's a lovely person. If you ever get to meet him, he's just one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And he would do anything for you. And I mean that sincerely. He would do anything for anybody. He's just a real good guy.
Yeah.
They stayed up here and did the beach race. They rode for 5 days straight.
Love
They
it.
rode enduro on the first day. They did the beach race on the Saturday, beach race on the Sunday. Rode enduro again on the Monday, and I went trials riding with them on the Tuesday, 5 days straight. So they're hardcore.
Yeah, I had the honor to meet him in BSB in 23. I walked by and he was standing there, and I just looked. I was like, "No way, that's Tom Booth. What is up?" Yeah, he was absolutely exactly like you described him. Super shy, but super lovely guy. Gave me the time of day and had a conversation with me. Of course, you know, when I was over there, Jeremy, my southern accent, as soon as I started talking, people are like, "Where are you from?" You know, I'm like, "I'm from Murdoch, Virginia," and it just sparks up this whole conversation. But it was, you're right, they're absolutely amazing. I do have a question for you too. Jason wants to know, what do you think of the competition and talent level in Moto America? Been a fan of you for a couple of decades.
Yeah, I think it's great that it's getting stronger and stronger every year. You know, watching that, the Superbike Championship this year, you know, with Bobby Fong jumping into it, Cameo, you know, coming back over again, and all, you know, Jake and those guys have been watching them for years, and luckily sharing the paddock with them for years. I think it's pretty good. A lot of the smaller categories and younger kids and stuff coming through. It's awesome. And Motor America are doing a great job. You know, even down to the Royal Enfield stuff, I think they're doing things a little bit differently than some other championships, but they're doing a really good job of it, and they are definitely, doing very well and bringing younger talent through. So can't fault Chuck Axel and Wayne Rooney for what they're doing. They're doing a great job. Of course, now you see other riders looking at Moto America and wanting to jump into it. Loris Baz and riders who've raced at world level now wanting to come over because they see that it's on the up. And obviously, riders also they chase fame, but they also want to get something out of it. And Moto America can be quite lucrative in that way, with championship bonuses and like particularly in baggers and some of the other classes where riders can now earn a little bit of money for what they're doing, for how they're showcasing, where they can't do it in other championships. So can't fault MA for what they're doing.
Yeah, I think they're doing a great job myself. They're doing great on social media, all the videos they make too. That's also a huge part of it. Over here in America, it's not nationally televised like baseball, basketball, and all that is. That's one thing I think we could do is a better job too, as well as advertising, especially when you go to most dealerships. You don't see nothing about Moto America, club days, track days, or anything, right? It's all how many units that they can sell out the door, but they are doing an amazing job. And
I think you see, what we see in the last couple of years, particularly, is a lot of bigger influx of fans coming to the tracks, some tracks in particular, and I guess that's driven by new categories and younger talent, and obviously, as you said at the beginning of the show, bringing baggers into it, Twins Cup, all of those categories, those classes are definitely helping in building the championship. So, I'd say that, and obviously, speaking to Chuck this year and what they're going to do in the next couple of years sounds pretty interesting. They've got a handle on how to move forward.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for our sport. I'm glad to see Moto America and everybody in the world want to come and race. I hear Michael Vandermark wants to come into the paddock, so we'll see what happens if he shows up. It speaks volumes.
He won't get it his own way. It's lovely to hear him wanting to come in and do it. That's great. That the social media reach and or however they're doing it is definitely reaching names like Michael Vandermark, Loris Baz, and anybody else who's trying to get over there, because they see a whenever one door closes, that one might open, as it has for me or had for me. I think it's a great thing you're getting names like that talking about it, because it can only make the championship stronger.
110%, I agree. Well, listen, Jeremy, I know we're approaching the hour, and I do want to transition into ask you where we get to know you away from the racetrack and all this motorcycle talk, right? So I'm gonna start off with saying, what's your best hire car story?
Ones I can't talk about. No, I mean, I've always been pretty careful about not trying not to wreck hire cars. Haven't always managed to do that, but yeah, of course you do your utmost. But I could tell you 100 stories about different riders in the paddock that I better not incriminate. But my only one and my best one was that, and I have to say that it was down to the tires that were fitted in the car, because when you go to Germany, you get snow tires fitted, and they use these snow tires even whenever it's not winter. We're at the Nürburgring, and we're flying up the road, but these roads up towards the Nürburgring are just beautiful. They're just fantastic, flowing, fast roads. And we're hammering on like we always do in a hire car, and go to turn in the last point. This point, we've been driving for about 15 or 10 or 15 miles. Tires are getting a bit warm. Car feels a little bit wobbly, and pushing the tires. And of course, I turn in, hit a curb, take the two front wheels out, take two front tires out. Police turn up, and they go, what's happened here? Because the hire car is on the verge, over the curb, and it's on top of the verge. And I said, well, a deer ran out. Of course, there's deer signs everywhere, and I said, deer ran out. I went to avoid it. And I went up the curb. And, yeah, I'm sorry. I took the 2 tires off it. Policeman goes, okay, we can get it fixed down in the village. We'll get somebody up to take care of it. I said, could you write me a docket so I can take it back to the hire car company? And he said, what do you need? I said, I need a police report. And he said, yeah, okay, yeah, we can do that. I said, by the way, could you include that on the car? There's snow tires. So he wrote me the docket out. Snow tires, middle of summer. Deer ran out. Couldn't avoid the deer because the tires weren't up to, they weren't summer tires. They were snow tires. Took it back to Hertz. They wanted to charge me for the 2 wheels because the wheels were damaged, 2 tires and everything else. And I said, well, there's the document that says that I had the wrong tires in the car. So I managed to get away with that one. But yeah, there's been a few more. We'd be here all night if I started to talk about hire car stories, but no, that was one I was lucky to get away with. I did get banned from, is it Alamo? Was there a hire car coming Alamo?
Yeah.
Because in going to Assen one night, we went into a counterflow system and it gets very narrow. We managed to weld both sides of the car closed on the way to the circuit. Just because we didn't see the counterflow coming up when we were going a little bit fast in a what we thought was an unrestricted speed level or zone. So touched both sides of the car, and then when we tried to go out of the car, we couldn't get out of the car because all the doors were kind of welded and closed. But we got banned for that one for a short time. Yeah, that's about all. That's it.
That's awesome. Oh, well, we'll save the other ones we can't talk about for Daytona when I see you there in March, my friend. One thing I do want to ask you is, man, tell us something we don't know about you at all, Jeremy.
What do you not know about me? I'm sure you probably know most things about me. That's a good question. I'm shy and like to not really go in front of the camera much, and I don't really do podcasts, so you won't see me doing podcasts. So this is probably one of the first ones you'll see me doing. I usually turn that stuff down just because I don't think I'm interesting enough to talk about. I'm pretty like we keep ourselves to ourselves. We've got a very small friendship group, not very many of us, and we just basically do normal things. We like coming up and eating out on the North Coast here. There's nothing really special to know about me other than I like I ride motorbikes, and I do get recognized a lot when I'm here. So we try to just go to the places where we're off the radar a little bit. And that's what we're doing up here too. Not that I love meeting people and talking about it. I'm talking about motorcycles and talking about career and all of the rest of it. But I think also you love to live a little bit more like under the radar rather than talking about motorbikes all of the time, because when you talk about motorbikes all of the time, you would prefer to talk about anything else. so
100%.
yeah, that's probably me. Yeah, I prefer to talk about anything else but them other than motorbikes, except whenever it's really important to go and talk about motorbikes, and then you're all you're all in, and that's what you're doing for a week or whatever it might be. But yeah, that's about it. I don't do anything else. I don't do anything strange. I used to go snowboarding. Haven't snowboarded for quite a few years. Love to ride trials bike with my son. We go and compete at some trials competitions, and that's about it.
Do you read any books or listen to any audiobooks?
Yeah, I love Reacher. I've got some books here actually. I brought them all up to read. They're all sitting over here behind me where the whiskey is and the cigars. But yeah, Reacher. Used to read Stephen King. That's really. I've read quite a few books in my time, but just lately, Reacher, and I actually prefer to read the book before I go and watch it on what's it on? It's on Amazon Prime or something.
Yeah, I think it's Amazon Prime. Yeah, I watched it. It was a great series. And then, of course, those that don't know, you was involved in a movie with Scarlett Johansson, right? Yeah, I listened to your podcast you was on when you was talking about that. I was like, man, I totally forgot about that. Working in that was absolutely a different experience altogether. Being in a movie, right? That's one of those once in a lifetime deals too, as well.
I think it's once in a lifetime things that you then realize that you don't want to ever do again. Probably it's yeah. I've really got to doff my cap to Keanu. Because I spoke to him about this a little bit. How long you're on set for? How long it takes to actually complete the movie? And sometimes you're on set for like 3 or 4 days doing nothing, waiting for the right light, waiting for the right weather, uh, waiting for whatever it might be. And I just found it very, just very tiring, hanging about, not doing much. Where because I come from a completely different background, we're doing action stuff all of the time. I love the action stuff in the movie. Called it was under the skin. It was called with Scarlett Johansson, and I'm just riding motorbikes fast in the middle of Scotland, in the middle of winter, in all the wrong conditions, doing things that we probably shouldn't have been doing on motorbikes at that time of year. And I loved that part of it, but I really hated the part of hanging about and doing nothing because we were snowed in or locked in our hotel for a couple of days just waiting for something to happen. You can see why they all smoke and drink too much because there's nothing else to do. But it was, yeah, of course, it's nice to say you were part of the movie, and you look back at it and think, yeah, it was 40 days of my life. It was probably the strangest 40 days of my life, but I wouldn't go out and rent it. The movie.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, listen, Jeremy, this has been absolutely amazing to have you on. It's been an absolute honor. I have one more question before we get off here is, listen, money, no object. You could have your own Moto America team in the paddock right now. What class would you be in? What's the manufacturer of bike? And who's the two current riders in the series you'd have on your team?
Whoa, that's a good one too, isn't it? Oh gosh, it would have to be between owning wherever, whatever's going to happen with Indian and in the future and Arts, but my heart says that I'd have to have Corey Alexander and Jeremy McWilliams on an Arts Super Hooligan. that would be a dream come true again. At my point in my career, to go out and then win the championship, have a 1-2. Because I think any championship that you race in Moto America, they're all as competitive or so competitive as you know yourself. That I would like to do that. I have a big soft spot for Super Hooligans because I was runner up in the championship and I'd love to win the championship. I also love racing baggers or learning how to race baggers because they're such a strange motorcycle to kind of to overcome to get the grips with, should I say. And but when you do, they're also incredible. They've surpassed anything that we ever imagined they would do in lap times. You'd never imagine that baggers would be as quick as super sport lap times, and that's a testimony to what the factories have put into it and how much they've thrown at this class. But I think for me, the class I love racing in is obviously Super Hooligan, and I want to go back there, and I want to, I've got a little bit of unfinished business, so I see some changes to the regulations for next year, which might help a little bit. I don't know if it's public knowledge yet, but there's some small changes happening, which I think will help. We want to keep the classes close together. We want to see it as absolutely as competitive as possible, like all classes. maybe the same thing has to happen with baggers as well. Maybe they want to in some way try to encourage more teams to join that championship without the burden of how much it costs to run, a full on season. Uh, I love the Twins Cup. I think that's got really competitive. It's lovely to watch. It's a really good class to watch. It's super fast lap times, and I think that's where the future's going to come from. When it turns into sports bike is what they call it over in British Championship. It's called Super Twins here at the minute. So all of that's got to kind of amalgamate and become a very, very even class throughout the world. So anybody can go and race on a sports bike or a Twins Cup, whatever you want to call it, anywhere in the world. And I guess that the future for me would be maybe to own one of those teams, or really competitive teams in that class, and try to help younger riders to develop into the bigger classes.
And you, my friend, will absolutely make it happen for sure. And I already said it. You're going to be the 2026 Super Hooligan with Arch champion in 2026. And can't wait to see you at Daytona in March, because you will be there, right?
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. And one way or another, I'll be there. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Listen, the legend Jeremy McWilliams, thank you so much for coming on. I had a proper mega time, and yeah, I can't wait to see you at in Daytona and cheer you on for that win in 2026, because you will win the championship for sure. So, man, it's been it's been a vintage class. it's been an absolute honor to have you on there, man. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me. I think anybody can follow me on Instagram on jmcwill99. I am on X, formerly known as Twitter, but not as much as I was back in the day, but it's still to jump on and off it a little bit too. If you search my name on X, you'll find me. But yeah, I don't do an awful lot of social. I probably should do more. I kind of like to do social when things are going good. When things are really happening and you're competitive and you're right up there. I think social is a nice way of showcasing that whenever you've got something to show. So I won't show you, out playing golf today with 3 buddies here on the North Coast. So, I don't think that everybody wants to see you playing golf, or showing the rest of the world that we've got a day off playing golf and everybody else is at work. I just post stuff whenever I think it's kind of the right time to post it.
Yeah. Well, you, my friend, again, is an absolute legend. It's an honor in this lifetime to watch you race and still do what you do. And man, it's an honor to have you on the podcast, Jeremy. It really is. And thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Yeah, I enjoyed that. It was a nice, easy one. So definitely big thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate man. The honor is all mine. Maybe in the future, you can sit down and do a part 2.
Yeah, sure. No, let's get some more things won first.
We'll talk about how you won the Super Hooligan class in 2026 at the end of next year for sure. 110%. So, Jeremy, again, thank you so much. This episode will be out everywhere here in about 30 minutes, and I'll send you the link. And yeah, man, I'll see you in March.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Take care, Jeremy. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, bro. Yes. Oh, how come
Calling all two-wheel enthusiasts, get ready to rev up your earbuds with Pin the Gas Podcast, the ultimate motorcycle racing podcast, hosted by Chris Simcoe, one of our very own excellent leaders here in Roanoke, Virginia. With expert analysis, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive writer interviews, Pin the Gas Podcast delivers the adrenaline rush of the racetrack straight to your ears. Whether you're a diehard fan or a curious newcomer, you'll gain insights that will transform how you watch and understand motorcycle racing. On your favorite podcast app, join Simcoe as he takes you on a high-speed journey through the world of motorcycle racing. Pin the Gas Podcast.